We're going to quickly talk a little bit about Adobe Illustrator today. So when you first launch it, you'll see a graphic something like this. Yours might differ a little bit. Adobe does update those fairly frequently. This is the current version at the time that I'm recording it, but if you're watching it a bit later on, it might differ. When you start up, you should see something like this. So these are common file sizes that people often work with. Once you've actually worked a little bit in Illustrator and you have some recent files that you've done, you'll be able to see them down here. On the right here is a link to like tutorials and help and whatnot on Adobe's website. Adobe is trying to make their products a little bit more user-friendly. For a long time they really weren't because they're professional level, but they've been trying to be a little bit more approachable for new users as well. In addition to your option here for help, if you have the full version of Creative Cloud installed, you should be able to go to Learn up here and switch this to Illustrator, and you should be able to find more on there as well. So we're just going to create a new file. I'm not going to worry about this information right now because I just want to show you some of the basics. So I'm going to do Create. Once you open the program, this is what you should see. We have our workspace here in the middle, we have tools on the left, and we've got these panels on the right. Now I'm going to adjust this just a little bit to make it a little bit easier for me to show you things, and so that way I can zoom in a little bit closer to the application. So on this toolbar, I have two things at the top. I have these little dots here, these little lines. This lets me grab and move the panel, or I can put it back. And I've got these little arrows here. This will turn this single column of icons into two columns of icons, which then will allow me to squish the program a bit, which will make it a little bit easier to record and to zoom in so you can see really what I'm doing. These panels on the right side, you can also grab these and move them around. This is really just for like your workflow, right? So whatever works well for you, you can arrange them to match that, right? And depending on what sorts of things you like to do or you like to edit, there may be different arrangements that you prefer or that you like. And so this interface is pretty customizable. In addition, there are a lot more panels and stuff that you can utilize. So if I go up here to Window, you can see these are all more panels, and there's a bunch of them on here that I can open. And you can kind of play with those and see which ones may be beneficial to you. Now that being said, playing with all of these, it can be very easy to make sort of a mess of your workspace, especially if you're new to the program. So going back up to Window, they have this button here for Workspace, and you can reset it to go back to the way it originally was when you started. So if you mess things up too much, don't worry, just go and tell it to reset. You also have that option right here in this little drop down menu here. There are some other ones, right? So right now it says Essentials. That's the one that first starts up when we open the program. You can find other ones that are on here, and these sort of differ a little bit based on what people often use in that sort of work. For right now, I'm just going to leave it on Essentials, and I'll show you just a few things. So this is the workspace. Well, the whole thing is basically the workspace, right? Including all the tools. Specifically, within there, we have our Artboard, which is basically like a canvas, right? So this is where you would draw things, make things, etc. On the left side from our toolbar, if we grab a shape, we can put shapes in here. That makes sense. But this Artboard, we're not limited to it. So we can actually drag things outside of the Artboard. And the reason for this is the way that Adobe Illustrator works. Adobe Illustrator is a vector-based program, not a pixel-based program. So it's going to work a little different than the way that most people are used to graphic programs working. So in a vector-based program, all of these are basically objects. And this is good and bad. It's good in that it makes things very editable, and things can be changed and edited very easily even after you've worked with them. It also makes it very easy for the program to resize them in a way that looks very nice because it's not having to guess where to add pixels. It's just drawing all the objects bigger. So if we save this, I want to show you a little bit about kind of these objects so you can get a better representation of what Illustrator is doing. So I'm going to save it as an SVG file. Okay, there it is. Now this SVG file, SVG is actually like a computer language. If I open it in a text-based program, you can see the actual objects. So these rectangles are the rectangles that I made here. And this is why vector-based programs like Illustrator are so good for modifying and editing things afterwards, is because it's not having to refigure out pixels on a pixel grid. Instead, it's going into these objects and just modifying the attributes. So once we've created these squares, we can go in and change them afterwards to other colors. We also have properties over here, right? So we can change them on the left side, or we can change them on the right side, and we've got different options with that. So the left side is a little bit more limited, the right side gives us a little bit more preference. So like, not only can we change the stroke and the stroke width, we can also change the style of the stroke. So there's lots of different things that you can do with this. There's a lot of power to Illustrator. Additionally, each one of these tools has, well, not all of them, but most of them have more tools inside of them. These little arrows in the bottom right corner means there's more stuff in there. So if you click and hold down, you can see other tools. So try some of these out and see what happens and kind of start to get the hang of it. So the very first thing I would say before you get too deep into watching videos is just open Illustrator and try out some of these tools.